Hello, everyone. This is Kripa Anand, and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Today, we are discussing the art of understanding your customer in a rapidly changing market. In 2026, relying on gut feeling is no longer enough to scale. The most successful companies are the ones that turn raw data into strategic growth. Joining us today is Stephan Sigaud, CMO at Phase 5. With over 25 years of experience in market research, customer leadership, and strategy consulting, Stefan has helped global organizations achieve sustainable growth by mastering the voice of the customer. So, whether you are a small business owner or a corporate leader, his insights into marketing behavior are essential. Before further ado, let's welcome the special guest, Stefan. Welcome to the podcast. Such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Kripa. Me as well.
Now, Stefan, market dynamics have shifted, right? Making it even more challenging than ever to effectively market to the small and medium sized business segment. So, just to understand, from your extensive experience, what are the biggest misconceptions that, companies have when trying to effectively market their products to SMEs today?
So if we think about the perspective of not the SMEs selling to their customers, but the enterprise level brand selling to SMEs,
Mm-hmm.
there are a number of misconceptions. The first one is that SMEs are just like consumers. It couldn't be further from the truth,
Mm-hmm.
right? SMEs have a number of constraints that make the factors going in their decision making very different
Mm-hmm.
in their decision making when it comes from buying from larger brands to whether it's their telecom equipment, whether it's fleet of trucks,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's anything like that. Their decision making process is very different from that of consumers who might
Yeah.
buy on impulse, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
As a consumer, you see something you want, often you'll
Yeah,
you'll buy it,
it's a
right?
very it takes very less time to make that decision and to make that thing happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as someone who runs a business, or as a small business owner,
Mm-hmm.
you take more responsibility, you take more care, you're going to look at competitive, solutions, if you will,
Yeah.
much more in depth than you would. So that's one misconception. The other misconception, which is almost counter to the first one, is that businesses buy on pure rational criteria. That couldn't be further from the truth either. Business owners have emotions just like all of us
Yeah.
within
Yeah.
our personal lives. And so how you make them feel is also very important. Gaining their trust is as important as it is to gain the trust of a customer. As a customer, you go into, for example, uh, the person who services your car.
Yeah.
That's one area where trust is really important, right? You have someone whom you trust to take good care of your car. Same thing as far as brands selling to small business owners, they will buy from brands they trust. So building that trust is going to be as important as having the right product at the right price. So those are
Yeah.
two, I think, of the
Yeah.
main factors, right? You need to study in a way, you need to understand your business customers
Hmm.
with their specificity compared to your
Yeah.
consumers, right? If you're a brand, especially if you're a brand that services both segments,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to take into account their emotions as well. Trust being the key one.
Right. No, I loved how you articulated this because that was a very balanced answer. I completely agree with you. Specifically, when you are an entrepreneur, you are doing so many things together at the
Mhm.
same time, right? You're running the business, you're the accountant yourself, you're the salesperson yourself, you're the marketing guy. So often in all of this, emotions. As entrepreneurs they bury that deep inside them, and this is a very timely conversation, and I'd love to do another episode with you, where we can
Sure.
talk specifically about how emotions affect the different entrepreneurs and their decision making process. But
I'd be
definitely,
happy to. This is one of my favorite topics because
yeah.
it's one that is least understood. The
Hmm.
other thing that you just brought up, which is interesting because it goes to the rational side, is time,
Yeah.
right? And time-saving solutions that will rise to the top of when a small business owner will look to
Yeah.
buy something is that if the
Right.
process is simpler, faster, less paperwork,
Mm-hmm.
right, it's going to go a long way, which is again very different from consumers. There are cases when
Yeah.
consumers don't worry, they don't care about the time it takes. They want that particular, I don't know, light fixture. If it takes, you know,
Yeah.
2 months to come, it's fine because that's the perfect one they want for their house. If
Hmm.
you're a small business owner and you need to replace some light fixture in your store,
Yeah.
you want it like that because otherwise,
What's
customers
the
are
point
not
of
going to
it?
come in.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very interesting. Now, Stefan, let's explore why deep market research is accessible and also very essential when it comes to SMBs. An SMB usually has very limited resources, right, when it comes to
Mhm.
doing the R&D or having budgets. So again, from your extensive experience, I'd love for you to educate our listeners. How can an SME with limited resources leverage market research to gain that competitive advantage without
Mhm.
emptying their pockets or breaking the bank?
Sure. There are ways to do market research. And by the way, by market research, I what I want to talk about probably because it's the most important aspect of it is what's called primary market research as
Yeah.
opposed to what's called secondary market research or sometimes desk research where you go online and you find reports that tell you that um, you know X% of Canadians
Right.
want something a certain way.
Right.
That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the more traditional surveys,
Hmm.
asking people individually,
Right.
what do you want? How do you want it? Why do you
Right.
want it? Right? Um, and sometimes, focus groups and things like that. So
Hmm.
there are a number of ways to do that fairly inexpensively. One is, and it's been around for a while, but I don't think everybody in the small business sector uses it, is reviews and comments. And
Yes.
by the way, you could do it passively. In other words, you set up your
Yeah.
right your Google profile so that um,
It keeps
there's a
happening
place
in
for
the
people to
background.
post,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But what I would recommend to small business owners is be proactive about it. In other words, make it easier, ask people for their feedback, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, with Google Forms and, links on your website, you could do that easily,
Right.
and increase the number of people you'll get feedback from, so you
Mm-hmm.
can rely on it much more, right? Because if you have, 5 people in a month giving you feedback on something, you can't rely on that. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's not
Yeah. Yeah.
statistically valid. If you start asking and you gather more reviews and comments, then you can start count that as reliable information.
Right.
um, Another way is also to use AI,
Mm-hmm.
right? Go on ChatGPT and start asking smart questions, with the right prompts. It's amazing what you will gather. So
Yeah.
try to integrate that into your normal practice of running the business by thinking in terms of, what do my customers want? How do they feel? Right.
Hmm.
And by the way, if you're a retail, right, brick and mortar, ask people, what did
Hmm.
if the store is not too busy, right?
Yeah.
And you have a, nice somebody who looks like they would talk to you, ask them questions. What
Hmm.
made you come in today? Or if it's
Right.
a repeat customer, what makes you come back to my store,
Yeah.
right? Those are easy questions that will teach
Yeah.
you a ton about the why. which is more
Hmm.
important than the what, right? Knowing that you had, X people coming to your store is one thing,
Yeah.
but knowing why they came, that can
Yeah,
give
yeah.
you a lot, right, to build upon.
No, definitely. I completely agree with you. Addressing the who, what, and why are the basics of any business,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you're focusing on the why factor more than the what factor, definitely you're getting into the deeper side of, the reasoning of your business.
It's
Before
the
we
difference
go, yeah,
between data and insights, right? Data
right.
is, if you look at a restaurant, you
Yeah.
can you can see, for example, from your receipts, you'll see how many people, right?
Mm.
How many tables you had, and whether you have more tables or fewer tables than last month. But if you ask why,
Hmm.
now you understand what's behind those people's behavior, and you can influence it. If you don't know why, you can't influence it.
Wow, that's a very smart way to, think about that. Before we go any further, here's a special message for all of our listeners, specifically for all the founders watching. In 2026, data is not a luxury, it is your survival kit. If you are operating without understanding your customers' true pain points, you aren't running a business, you are running a guessing game. You don't need a corporate budget to start listening. Just like Stefan mentioned, use surveys, interviews, and analytics to validate your assumptions today. The businesses that win are the ones that stop assuming and start actually knowing. Now, coming back to you, Stefan, I completely agree with you. We don't need a massive budget to start gathering the insights that actually move the needle. So, to all the listeners, if you haven't been doing this already, please get started now.
Mhm.
Now, Stefan, let's discuss how turning research into, brand and customer experience, how it alignment of all these things, builds the trust, the credibility that you mentioned in the previous answer also. Um, why do so many businesses fail to align their brand promise with the actual customer experience? And what is usually the cost of that misalignment? Because an idea is in your mind, but the execution is in the actions. So if there's, a disengagement there, how does that play out for your business in the longer sense?
So it's a very, very good question. The cost of that misalignment is, it can be one of two ways.
Hmm.
If you I'll start with the nicer one of the two. If you are able to deliver more or better than what you're promising, you're missing out on opportunities to maybe increase price, for example, right? Or
Yeah.
increase the share of wallet of your customers. They could buy more stuff from you
Mm.
if they knew that you had more to offer, right? If, on the other hand, and that's the more negative one of the two, you overpromise and underdeliver, they won't
Hmm.
come back, right?
Right.
These in this day and age, some things that are table stakes. Whatever you promise, you have to deliver on that promise. Trust, everybody's talking about trust, regardless of industry sector, and regardless, by the way, of company size, right?
Hmm.
If somebody does something, if a company does something that uh, destroys or at least diminishes the level of trust that their customers have into their brand, they'll go somewhere else,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
So that's a very hefty cost, because that means you have to maintain your revenue level by
Yeah.
continuing to acquire new customers, which,
Hmm.
as we all know, is much more expensive than just having the same customers come back and again, because there is no cost of sales.
Yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree with you. This makes a lot of sense because, when your brand promise fails to match your customer experience, the trust that you lose, it's not going to come back, and it's very expensive to earn a lot of times, right? The experience that you give the to the end consumer is the only thing that gets the repetition cycle going ahead. Um,
Exactly.
right. So focusing on the retention part as much as the acquisition part is, I think, makes all the difference. So you've given a great reminder for that, Stefan. Thank you so much for that. uh, Now let's discuss how can a lot of business owners get that strategy that is in their mind into actionable, clear plan. So for a business leader, he often struggles to bridge that gap between having raw analytics and then executing a clear, actionable growth strategy. So, what would you suggest? Where do people start from?
So I'm going to skip the part on analytics because I think there are plenty of small business owners that actually don't have analytics
Okay.
or don't know what to do with it. My recommendation would be to spend a little more time being clear on
Mm,
who you want to be to your customers. What do you want the experience to be like, to feel like? That's what I would call a customer experience intent. Make
mm,
it very purposeful, right? Have a sense of this is how I want my customers to feel.
yeah.
If you have clarity on that, then it's much easier to deliver it. It's much easier if you have employees. It's much
Mm,
easier to tell your employees, hey, this is what I expect of you. I expect you to make our customers feel this way, right? And
right.
then compare how the actual experience matches or doesn't match
Yeah.
that idea that you have, right? So um, be very purposeful in determining that experience, which goes beyond just, I have a great product,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Of
You could
course.
have the best product in the world if your support team, right, your whatever you call it, customer service, customer support, or if you have a tiny company and basically they call to get help, what what do you want them? How do you want them to feel about the help they're getting? Do you want it to be fast, cheap and cheerful, or do you want it to be very warm and have everything fixed, regardless of the issue,
Yeah.
at no cost? Those are all decisions that you can make. They're in your control. And if you communicate those decisions that you've made, if you communicate them as expectations to your
Yeah.
customers and you know you can deliver against those expectations, they'll be happy and they'll keep coming back.
No, I think that is another great reminder that as an entrepreneur, you're never just selling, a physical product or a service. It is always an experience that you are delivering,
Absolutely.
and that experience can be different for each of the clients, even though they're getting the same products at the end of the day, right? So
Mhm.
that is very interesting. Again, go ahead, yeah.
If I may, I just wanted to add something which is a little more sophisticated, which is if you have a customer base that's already built up a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
consider the fact that not all customers are the same
Yes.
as it relates to their value to you. Some
Mm,
customers, and it's I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but some customers deserve a better experience than others, right?
right.
Those customers
Yes.
that there are customers that buy, say, more expensive items more often
Yeah.
from you. They will probably they actually not probably they actually deserve a higher level of service. So maybe it's a special line, a hotline, or maybe it's white glove
Yeah, yeah.
service, whatever it is,
There
right?
should be some
They're a
extra
little
cookie points or loyalty points, as you call it, right? For the
Yeah,
repeat customers. I agree. Yeah.
right. Because the loyalty of those customers who bring you
Yeah.
repeat business and a higher ticket item purchases, they're worth more to you. So
Right.
show them that as well. So a
Go-
little bit of
yeah.
segmentation approach can go a long way as well.
Great insights there. And definitely, I think this is a reminder for all the listeners also that when you are dealing with any of your clients, it's the feel good factor that, should be your priority throughout their journey with you.
Not
So,
all of them.
yeah, not
I'm
all of
sorry
them,
to
not all of
not
them.
all of
Yes,
them.
only the
Some of
ones
them
who
don't deserve
truly
it.
deserve. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Stefan, did you growing up wanted to become an entrepreneur as well?
No,
No.
no. I
What were your
fell into it.
plans? You stumbled upon it.
I fell into it. If so, for a little bit of personal history,
Yeah.
I was born and raised in France.
Uh-huh.
I gained an MBA from France. I moved to the States,
Uh-huh.
a long time ago. and I was looking to settle in New York. And at the time, through a rugby teammate who
Uh-huh.
was starting a market research firm in France, we made a deal that I would open the subsidiary of that markets research company in the States at the time. And that's how it, got
Wow.
into building a business.
Wow. So
Um,
only for that, conversation that you had with your rugby
yeah,
friend.
yeah, exactly. So, connections,
Yeah.
you know, connections are
And
the
throughout this
key.
journey, what do you think was your biggest soft skill, which you already had, which turned out to be a boon in the specific industry that you're in?
That's a very good question. So I think some of those, I guess, personal traits that are repeatable, right?
Yeah.
That people
Yeah.
should look for in others, maybe.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have them, you can't build them. You cannot build curiosity. I'd say curiosity
Mm.
is probably my
I can
first,
see that in the way you're answering as well. You're a very
right?
curious person. Yes. Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm persistent,
Yeah.
which for establishing a business
You
is
need to
really
be.
important. Is you have to be patient. You have to be resilient because God knows many things happen, in the
Yeah.
course of building a business from scratch. So I would say, yeah, curiosity, resilience, patience, passion also,
Yeah.
right? When you build your own business, you have to have passion behind it. So
Wow.
those would be the ones I would put out.
That was a great insight into your personal journey and how that phased the entrepreneurial part of it. Now, if we talk about the behavioral trait of SMEs, right? Um, what is that one behavioral trait that you see the small businesses specifically making that consistently use market research to achieve long term success?
Come back to curiosity, right?
Mm.
Curiosity, which is the drive behind
Yeah.
asking people what they think, what they feel, right?
Right.
Trying to find more about your customers.
Mm-hmm.
That is more a curiosity. The driver behind that is more curiosity than analytics, right? Having the desire to understand someone
Yeah.
better, engaging them in a
Makes sense.
conversation about what they like, what they don't like,
Uh-huh.
that you can give them. I'd say generosity also is a part of it, right? Because you have
Mm.
to want to make things better for your customer as
Yeah.
well and for your employees.
Uh-huh.
I would say those are some of the behavioral traits.
I'm loving this conversation, Stephen. And definitely, as I said, I'd love for us to do another episode where, we can get to talk about these things in a little more detail. But
Sure.
for now, before we let you go, if there's one final piece of advice that you have for a business owner who is, currently frustrated by their stagnant marketing results, what's that one thing that you want to tell them, whisper into their ears to reassure them right now?
That's a very good way to ask the question. And to me, the answer is you're not alone,
Mm.
right? I was a small business owner myself. I came across a group of small business owners at the time, and having that, we get together every once in a while, hearing that some people are going through the same obstacles, right? And finding ways to overcome those obstacles.
Yeah.
Um, make it a lot easier because otherwise it's lonely. It's lonely to be a small business owner because the buck stops with you. You have all
Yeah.
the responsibility for making payroll, for example, right? You don't, right? All those
Yeah.
things. So I'd say if you're feeling lonely, uh, get, look up some kind of meetup with other business owners and ask your customers. Right? So again, back to
The
conduct your
basics.
own
Yeah.
market research. Even if
Yeah.
it's not sophisticated, it doesn't need to be. You'll learn a ton of stuff, and you won't be either alone or lonely that way.
That is again a great reminder that your customer already has the answers that you need. You just
Mhm.
have to ask the right questions, right? So, Stefan, thank you so much for joining us today. And also, while we let you go finally, You mentioned towards the last part of the conversation that it's lonely to be a small business owner, right?
Hmm.
Maybe. But if you get a chance to, relive or redo the entire part where, you were deciding what to do next, would you still choose entrepreneurship again?
Absolutely.
That's a true
Absolutely.
entrepreneur right there.
It's um it's an exciting life.
Yeah.
And there are times in your life when it's a better thing to do than other times.
Mm.
But I would totally do it again.
Love the spirit. Thank you so much, Stefan, for being in this episode. Love the conversation.
Thank you very much, Kripa. It was a pleasure.
All right, that was Stephan Sigaud from Phase 5, a masterclass in why listening to your customers is the most scalable strategy you will ever execute. To all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and visit CanadianSME.ca for more resources. Lastly, a very special thank you to our podcast partners, UPS and ADP, our HR partner, for their ongoing commitment to empowering SMBs in Canada. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Kripa Anand signing off.